Okay, this is the regular meeting of the Fairhaven Historic Preservation Commission. Adequate notice of the meeting has been given pursuant to the provisions of the Open Public Meetings Act. At the time of the board reorganization in January of this year, the board adopted a regular meeting schedule for the year. Notice of the schedule was sent to and published in the Asbury Park Press on January 31st, 2025, and the Two River Times on January 23rd, 2025. And that notice was also posted on the bulletin board in Borough Hall and has remained continuously posted there as required by the statute. A copy of the notice is and has been available to the public and is on file at the office of the Borough Clerk. A copy of the notice has also been sent to the members of the public as has been requested. Such information in accordance with the statute. Adequate notice having been given, the board secretary is directed to include this statement in the minutes of the meeting. Can we get a roll call? Yes, here.
Yes. Mr. Anderson? Here. Mr. Schluter? Here. Mr. Heller? Here. Mrs. Fedora? Casey? Here. Mr. Smith? And Mrs. Forte?
Here.
Okay. New business. We have, it's actually a new application, but it's technically old business since we saw Mr. Nemser last week. Nemser? And that matter is 28A Gillespie Avenue, Block 51, Lot 32. And the application is for moving the front door from the area adjacent to where there's an existing window and vice versa as contained in the application. So obviously you were before us last month on an informal, and you presented a couple of ideas with regard to preserving the front door, getting a new front door. That was sort of the one issue that was sort of up in the air.
Yeah.
I guess we can kind of start with discussing that issue. How did that turn out?
Well, I've decided for a few reasons to try to keep the existing door and window. I like them both. I've always liked them, and for expediency purposes, it'd be a little quicker, a lot quicker and a little easier just to keep what I've got and flip it. Should I change my mind sometime, I'd reapply and show everybody what I was thinking about. But and thanks for revisiting the informal application. And back earlier this month, as you said, applied for a formal application in which shows up, put a few pictures together of what I'm proposing to flip flop.
Yep.
And they should be hopefully in the packet.
Yes.
So it's pretty cut and dry as far as that's the door and that's the window, and my proposal is to move the door where the window is and move the window where the door currently is.
How about the storm door? What's the plan as
I'd
far as
like to keep that.
Mhm.
Yes.
obviously it has utility too, I would imagine.
It does,
It's
yeah.
been there, yeah.
Summertime streams and so forth, I can do that. And everything fits, everything is fine.
So one of the things I did notice, because I know that there was an issue with regard to whether or not it was visible from Gillespie Avenue, and I did happen to notice that I did look that not necessarily the door where it's located now, because it's sort of faces away from Gillespie Avenue, but certainly the window will be there. So this replacement door will be in the place of that window. And although it's not plainly visible, it is visible from Gillespie Avenue. I think we all kind of looked at it and talked about it at length last time. The house is contributing. It's got an interesting story as its relationship to that fish camp that you're describing. Obviously, it's something I think that we talked about also, that it provides maybe some more symmetry to the house. It certainly doesn't negatively impact the facade. So I think it's a no impact, but more utility addition. And I think that, it's my thought that we should approve it in full. I don't know what anybody else thinks on the commission.
I think we're all in support of it. I think there's been that difference in where the prior location and the new location, and the fact that it seems to be up in there with the door itself. And I'm glad to hear that you're going to be restoring that, because it is now with some additional pictures. It's a very charming door.
Yeah.
Of course, part of the, character and history of the home, so I think that I'm personally very supportive of this.
Thank you.
I would think that door is probably original to the house, do you think?
Yeah, it looks like it.
Yeah, it's pretty close. It's,
What was the year of construction again? I know you meant
1927.
1920s.
Yeah, the fellow that's working on the house, he said with a little bit of his help, I mean, I tried to fix it up about 2 years ago to get it to this good. But he's better at things than I am, and I'm confident he can take it off in a few hours and this and that, sand it, a little fresh paint.
Who's he?
The gentleman who's working in my kitchen for the cabinets,
Okay.
he's a general contractor. Yeah.
Any other thoughts or comments from the commission?
That's. I really appreciate it. It makes more sense to walk up those steps and right through the door instead of making a left turn. It has always been a little bit awkward.
It almost seems like when that decision was originally made, that they maybe didn't think it through well enough, because it seemed logically going up your stairs that that would be the place to walk in. But
Exactly.
who knows what the thought was there? Any thoughts from the audience? Comments from the audience? Anybody from on Zoom?
No.
Okay, I will make a motion that we approve in full the application of Henry Nemser to move the front door or exchange the front door for the front window, and that the window be placed where the existing door is, and the door be moved to the facade front where the existing window is, as depicted in the application and in the attached photos.
Also, I can that motion.
Mr. Capel?
Yes.
Mrs. Drummond? Yes. Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Schluter?
Yes.
Mr. Heller?
Yes.
Mrs. Casey? Yes. And Mrs. Boyd? Yes.
Okay, congrats.
Well, thank you very much.
I can get to work tonight.
Yeah. Thanks for walking me through the process a couple of months ago, and
Not a problem at all.
really a pleasure to welcome you. So
You as well.
thanks for the decision. I wish you a lovely night. And not going to get out of this chair, right? Thank
Don't
you.
want to rush.
Thank you.
The next application is Brett Federo, 66 to Normandy Avenue, Block 48, Lot 7. This application, which we have seen before as a formal application to approve the construction, is for proposal to change the previously approved plans. The attic window specifically on the north side of the structure is proposed to be converted to a recessed balcony with a painted wood railing and French doors. Yeah, just identify yourself, if you could. Okay.
Hi,
Hey, good. Just identify yourself.
Anthony Fonderos.
Yep.
Architect.
How are you?
Good.
So I did receive a call from Anthony about this application and of course, whether or not it was necessary to come back. Obviously, we had spent a good amount of time, if I recall, this was an informal application originally. I did ask Sheila, and we were provided a copy of our August 29th, 2024 memorandum of action, which pretty much, the exception of a couple changes, I think, as to molding and maybe with regard to the pitch of the front roof, we approved in full. I think all thought it was a real nice proposed structure and would definitely enhance the neighborhood. But there's a specific tweak, I guess, that somehow along the way came about. And as I indicated on our phone call, it is something, since it is visible from the street, that street being de Normandy, and since it is a modification to the presented plans, it was necessary for you to come back to us. So with that being said, if you could present.
Sure, yeah, and I'll be wired here, so subsequent to our approval last time, we submitted for a permit, knowing that we have to go for variance. Once we got the permit, we went for variance, they wanted the public hearing permit, gave a whole bunch of reasons and tweaks and things, so the tweak that we are making on the attic area is to comply with the square foot surface area. We had to shrink that a little bit, and in order to do that, we pulled some interior things in the back, and then we need to grab a couple extra square foot, so we decided, okay, maybe this is a good idea to kind of shrink the surface area from the third floor to comply with the construction engineer said. The idea of the.
So that accomplishes, brings back your habitable floor area by, it's considered, I guess, a porch.
Correct,
Yeah,
correct,
okay.
yes, yes.
How many square feet?
Probably some intent there. Well, there as opposed to the other side.
I didn't hear the question.
Oh, the point I was making, sorry, I didn't, that the recessed porch there, it happens to face the river.
Yes,
So it takes advantage of that view
Correct.
there, so I would imagine that was probably part of the thinking and putting it there rather than, let's say, the opposite side.
right, it wouldn't make sense to do it there, of course, yeah. Yeah, and that's where the stairs come up, so if you're to go to the stairs to the right, there was a little nook area, I was like, okay, we can shrink that surface area by putting the porch there that much.
And did you, have you brought it within the square footage that would be necessary?
Yes, we did.
So, is that the only thing that is, hanging around as far as the, planning board?
Yeah, that was
zoning board approval?
George Rizzo, had a long list of things that he wanted from us, and that, he has a different way of interpreting square footage than I did, so,
Mhm.
in his eyes, we had too much, so I found ways to reduce it, and that's how we did it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the plan hasn't materially changed. This is just a small little element. It faces the river, but it obviously faces the river and the park at an angle that it is visible from De Normandy. But I don't see any real material change to the nature of the structure. I mean, it obviously exchanges the window for this little porch, but it's so minimal in its recess that it wasn't anything that actually led me to think that.
You see the cat.
Yeah, in a smaller version, not in this version. But at least it wasn't anything that appeared detrimental to me. So, Jay, with that, I'll let you.
Well, you look at great lengths at the front of the building to have it be consistent with the district, and I think we were all, very encouraged by that. And I can appreciate the zoning, implication there, and it also the view of the river. It's a wonderful asset to have, and, so, but my thought on that is that, the base of it is something that's a little inconsistent with the rest of the house. Not that some of these older homes didn't get modified at the time. Certainly they did. And although this speaks to a house that probably wouldn't have had a swimming pool back then, a refresh one, you get more than that in the next 30 years, I think, applies history here. And so my only thought is that there, I think it makes sense to make it compliant. I think it makes sense to have a porch looking out to the water. But I'm wondering if there's some other way of taking that would be, and I'm really talking about whether you're following the rafter line, whether, I mean, again, listen, you want to stay as consistent to what you've already done there. And so that kind of limits that. I mean, everything that could imagine. I guess having a flat opening would not be tall enough to be able to get access.
Just a flat.
Yeah, just one like a couple of items. Certainly, that is something that's consistent with a number of the research courses.
Right.
Or potentially we want the other top window on the front, whether you would do something that was more of a parade than where it's actually quietly taking up the same footprint. But I'm just free thinking because again, you put the tremendous amount of details and the actual between the conversation, the shutters, the front porch, the bay, and all that. And, at least my connections, my as consistent with some of the others, but at the same time, understanding that there's a need both for zoning and I would say it's a great thing to have out there. I mean, but I think you want to make this something that is has a good appeal and the ability, sustainability of, and is. Well, we need to protect the power. That means when you don't really know, you don't really get that, you have to do this.
We haven't yet, so. We haven't physically gotten in front of zoning yet, so I appreciate your comment.
I would add that, I think it's a beautiful house and front house, it's not, these are shutters. You're either right, it's only like in the front, and on the side, you're actually stopped with the, I can, it's a consideration to make some adjustment, that has to have that national presence, people look at it, it's very consistent deal all over that. So it's a little bit, that's fine, it's beautiful.
So we think you're putting shutters on that side of that arch?
No, I don't know, where's it out, you know, I think that just that shape seems to, will be very, yeah, certainly it's not at that period, the grand shingle ones, we have a big half arch, you know, that.
Yeah.
Which are cool.
I
Which are cool.
had a version with an arch,
Yeah.
actually.
But it, you know, it may be a smaller one, like more of a Palladian one, but still keeping that, so that might mean 2 posts coming.
Yeah,
up.
just straight.
That is just
Mine
Is it-
flat. That is
Almost to match, I mean, I certainly see what you're saying, Jay, you know, to match obviously the gable in the front, something, I mean, because that's the biggest issue right there.
I have a opinion for.
This is the way it.
Is there enough room to do that? Because obviously,
We can, I'll have to, let me see.
It looks like there might be, and again, I don't mean to force, but I just said, you put so much care into everything, and you see that you all have this slide like that. I think it's a great thing to have there, both for zoning and for just the appeal to have it. My God, it's.
Yeah.
And-
Yeah, not what it anything, like, everything's the right thing to do, like, let's just go ahead and do that.
well, it certainly would make this, make it look better.
Yeah. I didn't see that. No, that's not.
Okay. This is what Jay's talking about. You can see, right, guys, we're talking about religion. And whether or not it's little night novel.
Yeah, something like that, I mean, that's.
Right.
We're the same,
Yeah.
the same boat, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, the 2 columns would be the, you know.
That would be ideal, because arches don't need. Themselves up. Right?
Yeah, and that house is completely angular as well. There's no angle anywhere in that house. I mean, it's all angular rather, it's not circular.
Yeah, I think that might tie it into the front and, you know, I don't know if that even kind of like that.
I mean, the only thing it does kind of, I mean, there's that faceted end on the side of the house
Right.
that it sort of draws some symmetry with, but, would it be practical, Jay, to have something that, I mean, the roof line be consistent with the front gable? It just would take up too much vertical space.
We're sort of picking up on the front arch on the front. Although this is probably the corner. I think it's probably, you know, I'm guessing that's probably only, I think, 3 decks in that place. It is something installed. But it is, you know, like that might pick up on the. The arch here.
You said there's a lot.
And so just one idea, or going straight across, I mean, certainly one is wrong. But I'm worried
This is
that
gonna be-
that gives
this is gonna be
them
actually-
to being functional.
Right,
Actually.
yeah, you know, that too narrow.
I didn't bring that up.
One is about, changes about grammar, your piece on that. That kind of looks at you all.
Yeah.
I agree.
That was one that I did first.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's better than the street, and again, it's, slightly out of period to the front, but a number of these homes got renovated over, 150 years and were brought to some of the prevailing, pace and whatnot.
Yeah.
But that, I think that would be, something that's a little bit more consistent with it, so whether it's at.
So either that or the Palladium one would be fine with you, I guess, Jay, or, did they?
I didn't see, I didn't see.
You might have to pass it around.
Got that. Reflectors.
What was that? You were mentioning maybe columns before? I think that probably looks better, but,
This is the Palladium one where it was more of a hat. And then that's really cool. So that's why I didn't want to do like that. But I think either of the two would soften that side and not try and take it away from all the other wonderful trim.
yeah, and the other thing that I was thinking was that, the house that's existing right now is a mid-century Cape Cod. Nothing against mid-century Cape Cods, for certain, it's a great house. But just what you're proposing here, even though it's not a historic house, it's much more consistent with a lot of the other houses, in the district. And, a little bit of leeway has to give with the fact that it's new construction, and you've been willing to comply with the commission. And again, we're not preserving a structure. Obviously, we want to make something consistent to the extent that we have the ability, but it's not like there's a preservation of an existing structure. Actually, no matter how this plays out, whether it's the original or whether the one you would propose is so much of an improvement over what's there, as it relates to the, consistency of the district. But if you have a specific motion you want to make with a particular dimension or a particular depiction of it, maybe you want, maybe that's the way to accomplish, unless you think that it needs.
I'm a little concerned about the Palladium one being a little more restrictive, though. I'm not sure how well it's gonna fit once we actually draw it, so that's the only reason.
Is that something you guys have to figure out? I think.
Well, that's the Palladium one, the arch one that he just showed you, that one works. But I don't know which one.
The other.
Whatever they
Because of the column, I think without the columns, it looks like it's missing something.
Yeah, it won't look right, yeah.
So I think either the rounded one or having some kind of pilasters there.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of what you have. Like, I mean, you have square piers.
Yeah, we have very, yeah.
I mean, that would be scaled down.
Of course, we can fit the one that line with the arch and line, and we'll do that one. If it doesn't fit, then the arch that we showed you, we do that, or should we just pick it?
You kind of have to pick one.
All right.
Not kind of, you do.
Well, I would prefer the arch just because it's a little more open, but I'd rather do which one that you guys are gonna say yes to, so.
I don't know, what's some of the other thing? Joe, did you see the Palladium sketch?
I didn't see it.
This is, I don't think there's.
Yeah.
Alright, now that I'm looking at it, just figure, maybe this is the gentle curve might even be better.
Okay.
I mean, because it's gonna put, I mean, hypothetically, somebody purchased season 14, 30, 40 years after the house was constructed.
Right.
And, this might be too busy and really catch your eye, so.
Right, I draw too much attention.
And that seems to be the only place that that corner where it's coming in that house.
We don't have that might have been just, that was part of the, we can eliminate the point this one.
Especially with the arch.
Yeah,
Well, it's with them too.
yeah, that was just part of that 3D model that we did, but we can certainly eliminate the point.
Is it shingle or is it a concrete? Sorry.
Your flower?
No.
Well, I don't know, I mean, this is kind of weird.
Have a shiplap. It actually is depicted as having clapboard, pretty similar to the.
Yeah. South, right. Yeah. Right. It's. Yeah.
It's clapboard.
Yeah, it's not gonna be ship flower, it's gonna be cloud.
Jay, if you want to make a,
I'll make a motion.
make it, just make it specific though, like with, however, with as much specificity as it can, so there's, so we know what we're.
Well, and I think we could all make this with you sending that sketch so we can have it be a part of the record. So like to make a motion to accept the recessed area on the attic level of this, with the caveat that it would be a curved layout as provided by the architect and the drawings, which will be forwarded to the board, rather than the straight one that was presented this evening.
So you want, I can email that to you guys or?
Yeah, you'd email it to Sheila.
Or the curve, I'll email the image of that curved version.
Sure.
Okay.
And maybe even better is in the orthogonal drawings.
Two-dimensional.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
I'll second the motion.
Papa,
Yes.
Mrs. Drummond,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Schluter,
Yes.
Mr. Heller.
Yes.
Mr. Smith.
So you're still going to?
Mrs. Casey,
Yes.
yes, and Mrs. Forte.
Yes.
Front setback. We'll see what happens. All right. Thank you.
All right, step by step.
Thank you, everybody.
Have a good one, guys. All right, the next matter is an informal, not technically an informal application, but it's Stephen Saraf. And it has to do with 470 River Road, block 17, lot 12, and it basically is bringing to the commission a general discussion to learn the guidelines on obtaining a century home plaque for their 118-year-old home, which was researched via Monmouth County Archives. I'm trying, did you supply photos of the house? I'm just trying to think. I don't know exactly which house is yours.
It's the one it's constantly maybe.
So it's on the corner of River and Hants?
No, so the corner of Lexington and River is where Andrew Creek used to live. I don't know if anyone knows that White House. We're right.
Oh, okay. All right. And 118 years old. So what do you know about the history of the place?
Fascinating.
Okay.
The land share, together.
So I did some research with Monmouth County Archives, got all the way back to 1907. Found out that there were a couple of builders who were very common in the area and worked with a lot of properties and a lot of homes. Theodore White.
White,
Another one was William Sowing Jr. And they actually sold houses to each other and to others. I learned at the archives that it's difficult to trace owners through the Great Depression because properties changed hands quite often. But we were very lucky that Annie Stryker owned this home for 48 years from 1913 to 1961. We're only the fifth owners of the house. So another owner actually right before us, Henry Thomas, was in a home for 32 and a half years. So,
Henry Thomas?
um, but we found some articles online. One of the owners passed away in the home. And they had the funeral right in the home with an officiant from Little Silver. 100 people attended, so there was an article before the funeral and an article after the funeral. So we found that very interesting.
Yeah, it's also really fascinating too, because I forget which one of the owners, but I think maybe two of them. One was like the superintendent or some kind of foreman at what's now.
The Hartshorn Estate.
Yeah, and then there was another owner that he was a superintendent somewhere else and, you know, in a state, and it's probably, you know, still on the Monmouth County Register. So it really fascinated me that, oh, this common, you know, four-square house, and nobody thinks anything of it, you know, maybe an eyesore, knock it down, whatever, but there's some really amazing history in it. It's Monmouth County history. And, you know, it's like, it'd be nice to at least recognize that and say, hey, this house has a little bit of significance beyond being this old eyesore.
Right. And were all the deeds online, or did they, I don't even know how far back they've actually,
So the archives go from now back to about 1970, and then there's a big gap from between 1900 and 1970 where everything is on microfilm and you have to go in person.
were you able to
So I
connect those dots?
took a day off work and spent about half a day there. The archives are actually in the basement level of the Monmouth County Library headquarters in Manhattan. And I worked with a young man, an employee there who was an undergraduate and graduate student at Monmouth University, and I worked there, so we had a nice connection and chat. But
So the concept of the Century House was something that, and Pat will be able to tell us a little bit more about it. It's something that even predates the Historic Association and predates this commission. It was a private group of people that basically, well, you'll tell it better than I do, but they got together for the purpose of recognizing and appreciating the houses, which were then century houses. That was probably in the 80s. You know, it's a moving goalpost in terms of how, if you're a century house. And if you were able to prove, in fact, that the house was 100 years old, and some people did it from a variety of ways, showing construction materials, showing newspaper clippings, photo albums, family photo albums, and then it was up to this group to decide whether or not you'd established it, and then to award the plaque.
And the easiest thing to do is doing the grantor grantee index. That was easy.
Well, sometimes it's easier than others. and
Yeah,
yeah.
but I found that was the easiest thing to do.
So it is not something that the Preservation Commission has ever been involved in, and nor is it really something that I think that we're moving to get involved in at this point. But we wanted to bring you in because we wanted to answer your questions, wanted to learn a little bit more about your house, and it's just kind of, you know, sort of up our alley a little bit. But we do have representatives from the Fairhaven Historic Association, which is it's not associated with the borough, and I think that they're making inroads to kind of resurrect that Century House the plaque program. And Elise Casey's here on behalf of the association. She wears two hats. She's on the commission. She's also the president of the association. And I know that they're kind of putting that, it's in the origins of putting it together, and she'll be able to explain a
I
little bit
have
more.
all the press to give out to people. I'm
So we have
waiting for
plaques that are
people-
waiting to go.
Waiting to come to me and.
So do you have any insight in that, Elise, in terms of what the plans are, even though they might not be finalized in terms of how you want to do that?
They put them, it's a century plaque. They have to prove that it's a century plaque by going to the grantor grantee kind of thing. It goes right on the front door.
Yeah.
Like,
the left to the right side.
I don't think so. Mine is like, I don't even know. I think it's on the right side. I'm not sure.
There is some additional.
Depends on your political affiliation.
I have,
Maybe some people put it right.
yeah. No, I do have some plaques available, but you have to prove that you've gone through that whole thing. And it's kind of fun to do.
it really is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
I mean, she came up from the, you know, the archives. She's all charged up about this, so like, tell me more, and then it's like, well, this person died there, it's like, oh, great. That's, you know, It's really fascinating.
It is, yeah.
It really is. And so what you were saying, you know, there's things that we found in the house, you know, it's like, this is old stuff. We found whenever we redid the porch, in one column, they dropped a roll of string. And it was down the bottom of the column, and it would happen at our secretary's desk, you know, displayed. It's this perfectly preserved spool of string. It's just amazing. Bottles. and
Advice,
coins.
points, yeah.
You know, and then it's almost like just knock the place down, so you don't have to see all this history. You know,
Yeah, yeah.
as a kid. You know, that's the way it is. It's so fascinating.
Sure. So what information can we give them, Elise, in terms of, you know, just how what's happening or what's like sort of the program, or what do you think about that?
So, it's something we talked about, as a few other people that have reached out recently, asking if they qualify. So it would be about us collecting some of some and our has some, and then reaching out. I can give you my contact information or email, and then
Yeah, just present, yeah, maybe put it together, just, you know, and support, you know, submit the application.
That were given to me, they actually, I found them in the garage, when I moved there 40 years ago.
I think it's thank you.
Yeah. So I was like, what are these things? And I looked, and, you know, I checked it out, and so I only gave away about 4 or 5 in all these years. No one, you know, someone has to like tell people that this is a possibility.
I have a question about that. Is that related just to the age of the house or anything to do with retention of the original feature?
No,
The age.
no, it's just the time.
So Pat, if you, obviously you're a trustee of the association and still involved, you want to entertain this, if you have the plaques, if you're satisfied, it's Century House?
Yes, I would love it, and I've talked to a couple of people that said they were going to, because they do have to prove it, that they have the house, you know.
So if you're your people, then maybe you
Yeah.
want to change information.
Copy of, this is the grantor, grantee and the dates,
Perfect.
The
And
number of
plus you also have the newspaper clip, so maybe
Yeah.
we should put together a report that will get.
That would be great. I mean, I'm getting old doing all this.
Are all the deeds raised seal? Pat insists that they
What?
be raised seal, not.
No, but I have probably 24 of these brass plaques,
Yeah, yeah.
and I'm waiting to, you know, I've been waiting for years for people to say, hey, so maybe we should tell them, you know.
Yeah, well, this is great, so I'm glad that we put you guys
Yeah.
together, maybe you want to just, however, the easiest way, maybe a phone, either a phone or an email, how you guys can connect with one another.
So there's no like Monmouth County registration, or this is all new to me, so I've always been curious too, that's why I'm wondering. You don't have to like,
No, it's not associated with Monmouth County, and
Okay.
different towns have different,
Yeah.
standards for, I just learned a little bit about Rumson's, they have it pretty formalized, and they have actually a catalog of all the
Okay.
century houses, and they do. a
that's
similar
what I thought,
situation.
okay, so like it's town by town. just
Yep.
kind of-
The
okay,
next
good to
meeting,
know.
I'll bring a couple of those brass plaques to show everybody, because it would be nice to have it. I have one at my house.
Yeah, I actually had, a friend of mine who just recently asked me about it, and I said, I have no idea, but I'll get information, so. I will let her know as well.
About this is not nice, conservation.
So I have printouts of all the deeds.
Yeah, so I guess we'll take these.
Yeah, you want, is that the best way, Pat? They'll put these things together in a document and send it to you?
Yeah. that
Okay,
would be great.
what,
That would be
your email is? What do you want to give me your email?
I'll give them the.
Well,
Okay, yeah, good, that's fine, if you want to do it.
okay.
Actually, so,
What year is that?
well, we got back to 1907. I was a little unclear on if, it's in, there's several blocks now in River Road that were known as East Side Park. And, they were, like a large area was divided into plots. So I think my understanding is that our plot was established in 1907. So the house probably came a little bit later,
Mhm.
but I think the property was purchased for $900. There was an estimate that the home was gonna cost $4,000 to build, but.
It wasn't just any house. It said, Mr. Wilson's, something about the very next house or something.
Yes.
Do you have, is there any stained glass or what's the banisters in the house? What are the banisters like?
No, we didn't find anything.
We've applied with some of our.
We had an addition a couple of years ago. We actually, it was worthwhile, but we made it look like it fit with the house. And
How
we
does it-
recently replaced the windows. We still got the diamond lights in the upper sash and, make sure the trim was done the original way. The guy that did it was probably, he was probably annoyed with me because I was like, I wanted this way and this way.
How about the banister and the stairs? Sometimes,
It might be, yeah, it's all original. Unfortunately, I don't know if it's good or bad, but the people painted everything, they didn't prepare it properly, and now everything feels off.
Mhm.
The problem with that is that there's so much labor to strip
Yeah.
that. And one of the things is I actually went to Monty Lumber and I don't know, I took a piece of it and I said, how much would it cost to get some of this, custom molding?
Yeah.
It was reasonable. It beats stripping it and, going through all that.
right? Is it chestnut, do you know?
I don't think it is, not, the banister may be chestnut, but I think a lot of it is, fir or something like that.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, 1903 to like 1910 is a flurry of building. A lot of chestnut being used, and a lot of these builders, they, between like the banisters and the stairs and some of the stained glass, they kind of have their own trademarks and, sort of see similarities, especially in the banisters.
We really like the setup, actually. You walk into the living room and you're facing a fireplace. And then off to the left, there's two steps that go up to a landing where we put our Christmas tree and it faces the front window. And then, stairs go up to a landing and turn, so it kind of makes an L shape to go up. And
Nice.
Today people look at it's wasted space.
Yeah, yeah, right.
There's no closets.
How long have you guys lived there?
See, I'm trying to.
1988.
Yeah, very good.
Okay,
So,
well, great. So you have the information, you have, you can put it together, and, thank you very much for coming in. It's an interesting story and very nice meeting you.
Yeah, thanks for
Thank you.
doing the questions. It's perfect. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. Right, so we have, why don't we flip it around and Councilperson Cole, would you like to come on up? So let's talk historic, let's go to the Historic Association first, because that, will lead us into Bicentennial Hall, and then we have a couple of specific items with regard to Bicentennial Hall, so I don't see Katie, so you're it.
Since the last time we met, we did recover some brick and some wood that we were in such a, on the east side. So we have that. Where did you get from? From the police department. Like, it's right now, someone, in number that we out here, that belongs to the minutes. I think we talked about, I'm looking at the happening, Mission Burger on Carrigan Road. And council will be one of the, my commissioners was
Okay, so let's start with that, the Goldstein partnership. We were provided a copy of it's the April, 2025, proposal. Tell us about it.
Sure, you probably recall, Matt Cronin is the architect who's working on the building with the ADA work. The next bucket of work here is what we've been calling the punch list. Which is a number of things I don't typically call a punch list, but they're kind of random and somewhat bizarre, but they go together and it will help complete. Bicentennial Hall loose ends, thus punch list. And the number did not reach a bid threshold, but it did exceed the need to reach 6,600, I think, is the threshold. If you go over that, you have to get two quotes. You need the taxpayers, of course, that's the reason you get these quotes, and if you hit the bid threshold, you gotta go out to bid and require to take the lowest bidder, qualified lowest bidder. So we exceeded the 6,600 threshold and had to get two quotes. One was from Matt Cronin and one was from the Eli Goldstein group. Probably appropriate to say, led by Laura Berlin, who has had some experience in bicentennial. The Eli's group had the better price, as is required by law. They were awarded the contract for the punch list. And I can say there's some language in the resolution that are in the there's some language in there, but it's not very specific as to what the scope of work is. It touches on some things, but not all things. And there's going to be a sort of follow-up discussion as to what needs to be included in that, just because there are some specifics that have fallen off the list.
And this was just approved, was it approved yet last night?
Last night meeting.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it was in a line with what we've talked about, obviously the specifics and the financial aspects. It's something not that we're involved in. You wearing two hats, are you satisfied that the things that the commission has expressed and concern and the association has brought to everybody's attention are being accomplished by what the Goldstein partnership is going to address?
I think the Goldstein group is taking its direction from Chris York, who of course takes its direction from the council. We work with this committee structure in our local government, so that direction is probably going to come from a committee, but it can be informed by informal bodies. Advisory comment can be informed by other council people. I see some things that will probably, because it refers to exterior, I don't think that's going to include paint, and it's the dedicated bicycle parking area. Over landscaping around the generator and trash enclosure and things like that, all of which is good and appropriate. There are some things that aren't on there, such as reinstalling the doors that are downstairs. I don't think it references repair and or replacement of the locks in the front door. So they're not, gigantic oversights, but they're just a couple things that probably should be made sure that we capture. This group will now have to put it together what their role is to identify and put together the component of the bid package that, think of like an Oreo, our in-house engineer will do the front end of the bid package and the back end. It's all, it's the same stuff that is always in our bid packages. It's the language required, the employment obligations and equal rights, so all that stuff. But the specifics of the work to be done here is going to be crafted by an architect. And I think that's a good thing.
Yes.
Yeah. So we have a little time, not much. I think this is the right meeting, and probably this is the right meeting to kind of capture any thoughts you might have about what things are not included in there, because you don't have anything to go by other than the fact that it references external work. I would say give me, and Sheila, of course, your thoughts about what should be in the punch list that might not be now. I referenced two things that I know are not in there, but in terms of internal attention, that we know the basement needs attention.
The water issues have been resolved in the basement, haven't
Water
they?
issues resolved.
Okay. What attention in the basement?
Oh, we clean up and we have distribution, just ensure that it's painted and or sealed. So it's completely clean.
Is it
And
in the same corner where it always gets water?
yeah,
Yeah, over there.
Well, has it been
Yeah.
rectified?
yes.
Okay.
What did they have to do to rectify it?
It was a combination of things, but the way the ramp interface with the building, the flashing had either failed or it wasn't done correctly or over time, and it just, so you question us about the flashing, I didn't get to see it myself. But the combination of the grading, which, kind of, and then the installation of the ramp and where it interfaces with the building, just created inherent vulnerabilities and the water finds its way.
Does this include, the external work, does that include painting?
Yeah,
And does the paint analysis part of this? Because it would not go too further.
I'm not aware that it is, Steve.
Yeah. So that's if they would do a paint analysis.
I mean, I think we should make sure it's in your minutes and that, there's some communication from this body to the governing body. And then, like I did last night with your transom memorandum, that's on the record, and, when it's time. I don't set the agenda, the mayor and Allison set the agenda, but, it's on the record, it's an item for the council to discuss and decide at a time when it's appropriate to come on the agenda.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, obviously the paint is the one thing that comes to my mind too, because we've been discussing it. We've actually done a little bit of legwork on it. I know it may be premature at this point, but I guess there's no harm in bringing it to the council's attention at this point. Is something that they are aware of, that the commission wants to weigh in on, or at least have some say or something to say about it, depending on however the decision is made as to what the paint color will be. So yeah, I have no problem with putting something together, just indicating that the exterior paint is something that the commission wants to have some say in.
I mean, I think it's in the language is plain in the ordinance, while the commissioner own the building is owned by the people and the government has jurisdiction over it. He says jurisdiction was assigned to the Historic Preservation Commission. And that includes the exterior of this building. It's within your jurisdiction.
Anybody have any other thoughts of things that may have not been included that you'd like to have included? I mean, that's the one, in terms of that painting the basement, things, that's a little bit of micromanaging, I think. I don't think anybody has any comments or what's the way in on it.
The portion of the landscape that's been identified in this scope has to do with, this cleanup, removal of the basements and, ivy, other removal of ivy. We have I don't think that's really studied the site. It slopes away pretty steeply. I mean, it's interesting. I don't know how it happened. So we want to make sure that slope is stabilized, the trees are obviously helping keep that in place. So there's probably going to be a little bit of a judgment call, but it's generally considered cleanup. It's the way I would characterize it. But on that note, the Historic Preservation or the Historic Association, the board of directors voted to make a donation to Fairhaven. And the initial conversation, which was authorized by the board, was to propose a donation of a completed landscape design for Bicentennial Hall, with the hopes that that would be completed by our 250th, so by July, summer of 2026. And that initial presentation was made and endorsed by the council. Now we'll go and interview landscape architect. Actually, would love any suggestions this commission has in the way of landscape architect. If you've worked with anything you would like. And we'll go step by step with this commission and the board of directors, the Historic Association and the council. So we'll review proposals. We'll look for, some input as we get conceptual, plan scaling, and then, aim to have a complete design. Again, approvals along the way, it'll take a little time, but I think we're starting just in time.
Mhm.
Sorry, that was a long answer to the landscape question.
No, but if-
That's what's going on.
Sticking with the paint color issue, Steve, at our last meeting, we talked about maybe reaching out and trying to acquire some resources to help us with, the selection process. Steve, sent an email, maybe you want to explain your efforts and what we're.
Yeah, I guess it might be a good fit right with the here, but I sent, I asked a friend who's a principal in an architectural firm, that's some really significant historical work, like in Washington, New York, area. And she basically said, we almost always work with paint houses and color, we kind of start paint materials and colors, we start from there. Sometimes common things like what is on the colors and work with them, we start with viewers, and then set with the floors. What is done normally depends on the preservation and treatment approach to the building. But so you know the actual program of chronology for restoration, we can find a decision. And maybe we could put it through, we can make a suggestion that an exterior painting houses to identify its paint and colors be part of this project right now, since it's something, it sounds like, I don't think it's in there right now.
Is the original place still in black?
Well, about 30 or 35 years ago, I took piece of paint, well, still the last, piece of wood. And I took it home and I had it, I gave it to a person that analyzed it, they put it in a septic tank, whatever they did. And they said that the color was the proper color, that was the original color of this building. It was like a dark green.
Is there any documentation of that?
No, nothing. I mean, who knew back 35 years ago, paint it.
Every photo I've seen has been like a light color. Have there been any photos, or has anybody indicated they've seen photos that show it in in the green color? It's kind of tough because obviously it's both black and white, but.
It's hard because even if it's green, it would look lighter.
Yeah,
than black and white.
and that's kind of, so I I reached out to to Mark Pavlov, and he has yet to get back in touch with, but also Joe Zemla, who's the curator over at the, Monmouth County Historic Association, Joe Zemla. And he responded, I guess their phones are out or something, but nevertheless, he shot me an email and indicating, that same thing, that most of the early colors look like on the tan side or on the white side, but it's very hard to tell because it's all black and white, that they would look in their archives to see if there's any postcards. That's obviously was a big thing, around the turn of the century in antiquity, if you will, to have these postcards. So he was going to look into that. And then he also mentioned speaking with some of the people from the Parks Commission, because they're responsible for maintaining the historic buildings, and they may have worked with people that are involved in the paint aspects of preserving. Yeah. So I'm waiting. That's pretty recent stuff. So I guess we'll wait and see what happens and what we can come up with as far as that's concerned.
I mean, it is really interesting, the color palette back then was a very different days than what it is today, and what it was the teens, the 20s, the 50s, so it's an interesting discussion.
The colors for everybody's house.
Yeah.
It's dark, there's
Yeah,
dark green.
more pungent.
Yeah.
These colors, they just.
So that was just, the
Well,
church.
case in point, look at the train station.
Yeah.
That's a really good example. Very simple.
And I think if you're doing a color analysis, though, it's not really about churches, it's about African-American churches in the period. So that's the idea that wanting to respect and recognize what it was in the early years. And I suppose if it changed colors over the years, that also represents what the African-American community was doing. But I don't think it should be a reflection of what the residential neighborhood does, unless that is somehow connected to the African-American community, because that's the reason it's a historic church. So, so a generic paint assessment or a generic way of looking at it will not get us to where we would be to really respect the integrity of what this building was at the time.
I'm kind of taking a responsibility for it, because when I picked up that piece of chip on the bottom rim of this building, I just said, hey, here, look, you know, go, check it out, you know, see what the original color was on the bottom. I never paid attention to it or anything. We gave it to somebody who did that, and, it wasn't.
Maybe it's not.
you know,
Maybe
I'm
it's not.
sorry that I wasn't into it.
Were they, was that chip, I mean, did you feel comfortable that it was one of the original pieces?
Yes,
Yeah.
because it was, when we took the chip off, it was the original piece of wood, no paint at all on it.
Mhm.
And so there was obviously layers of different color paints. And so that's why I knew that, I mean, you know, I thought that should be examined, and so it was given off to somebody, and I lost contact with all that, so it was, somebody else was doing it, I don't know who it
Okay.
was, I wasn't that excited about it, you know, I didn't know it was gonna be that responsible, so.
Any other issues that anybody feels want to,
Just to say, I don't know how expensive it is, maybe it's not outrageously expensive, but if this is the original wood siding, they can do that. They can give you a chronology of the colors.
There's
something.
left.
is any of the, is it,
Oh, I don't know, I took it off the corner of the lowest piece of wood. And it was coming away from the wood, so I just took a piece.
And they didn't reside this building, they.
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so that some of that may be here for.
Be cool to do chronology. I don't know if that costs more.
And I mean, I've given the names of a couple of firms that do it, but I couldn't really do any more work. If it's pulling up my ass, if you want it down. I have a letter from the to.
What do you have any experience with the fees associated with this kind of work? Does anyone?
no, I can't imagine it's extraordinary.
I wonder.
Probably
if
an
we
hourly
get
rate.
support That, because it's a technical job, I wonder if there's some technical resources available through the County. And at least I'm trying to get your, do you know, I know you're familiar with some of the staff. Do you know if they have someone or can refer someone who maybe does pro bono work? I think we reach out. I think that'd be good to find out,
I don't know.
you mentioned what
Yeah, I know that it
professionals.
was gonna be good, but I think
Folks, I
somebody
think I
else.
heard you say that, you have a few firms that you know do this.
Yeah, keep
Myself.
I mean, the names of two firms, there's not any recommendations, they don't do it themselves, they're an architectural firm, but there's two firms that do.
The day
Do
you,
their
I
contract.
mean, that might be worth putting in a memorandum, obviously it's up to the commission, but it's-
If you want, I mean, I'll make a phone, just ask them, see if they'll tell me the firm what we're talking about. Or, you know, multiple complexes.
Yeah, I mean, don't know what the borough is gonna do with it. I mean, obviously, we're gonna weigh in, but they, you know, to the extent that they're going to, I mean, they have to consider it, but whether or not they abide by what our recommendations ultimately are, or the processes that go into making those recommendations, who knows?
well, I've been entertaining for the process. That can be kind of unwelcome for people who want to
Yeah, right.
move to action.
But just so, we don't have any kind of miscommunication or misdirection, so, because this will be a memorandum that'll just kind of one of those, be those points of action memorandum, similar to the transit. I want to make sure that we get it to the right people, so how do we do that? I want to have the system worked out that we don't.
Yeah, whatever you think is appropriate, the last memorandum went to the next. To first your. To review with the idea that, basically. Try to move it, you know, towards an agenda, if we would like it to include others.
So Sheila and I had a conversation, the disconnect that, at least I feel like the disconnect that we identified is when I was liaison for the Environmental Commission and Shade Tree Commission, those secretaries communicated certainly to the borough administrator and then, directly to the governing body. In this instance, we're going to communicate, keeping with Chris York's direction, correct? It's gonna go to Chris York, CC the mayor, myself. Obviously, Art, you'll be on there. And I will immediately be able to, now I know that it's not gonna go directly to the governing body, which was the step I have been anticipating.
Mhm.
So, and then I will intercept it and, the president will circulate it to the governing body and, bring it up at the next council meeting.
That's, any other issues with regard to the paint issue? Or any other? Since we're talking about memorandum, any traction or anything happen with regard to the transit issue?
Other than
That
getting.
did come as a surprise. I had some discussions with some people in town and they didn't really know much about our role or whether, our position. And quite frankly, I'm not certain that we have a formal role with regard to that, but.
It will go outside, a formal role. I would agree with you. I think in the interest of the community and of the values, historic preservation, I'm comfortable saying that this body, the Historic Association, when it seems like it falls outside your typical jurisdiction, that it seems right and good to at least get some advisory comment to. Oftentimes it'll be the only thoughtful, set of recommendations, because you've talked about, we spent 2 meetings, maybe even 3 at this point because of the lag, but. So it was presented last night at the council meeting, it was on record, and again, it'll be up to the mayor to decide when to put it on the agenda. In the meantime, it's safely tucked away in our basement, here in this building. I never like that, it makes people feel complacent, I promise to make sure that it's not there next year, or I'll do my best. But when it's in the building, it has to come down, that's the time to find its new home.
Mhm.
But unfortunately, that didn't happen, it's okay. So it'll stay safe.
Have the design plans for the community center been defined? Have they been finalized on the interior?
Yeah, I think we were all thinking if there were some design professionals still milling about, or we hadn't closed out the contract, might they be available? It sounds like that's viable. I actually think it's a whole separate scope of work, really, because the transit needs some TLC, which is an artisan. I imagine that would be your guidance. And then, someone needs to also design the actual display, where it goes, at what height, and how is the ledger board, how is it held in place, can we do LED on a timer, like. So it's a whole project, especially if we add the language, which I thought was an excellent suggestion for the commission, to add a bit of narrative to support the piece. So I actually think at this point, with that much yet to be done, it kind of is deserving of its own project. We could, I don't know where to go next with this, however. It'd be great to find a graduate student that might be qualified and find this to be interesting. But I'm open to suggestion.
Suggestions? I guess it's kind of one of those things where what are our options? Yeah, that seems like a natural fit in the community center, but if that's not an option, that's how
It's a natural, it hasn't been bad.
okay.
Personally, I mean, I can.
Well, we've made our intention
Yeah.
clear in terms of that being the preference. So at some point when the time is right for it to come up, or it gets on the radar, then maybe that's the time that these more specific issues be considered. But I am a little bit concerned about the fact that those might be pretty quick judgments that have to be made at some point to integrate it. And if it's not, you say it needs TLC, I don't know what kind of condition it's in, or maybe you don't want to clean it up. I don't know. Maybe you don't want to restore it.
That's a good question. Should it be there's chipped paint and, I mean.
So if it's just cosmetic, maybe that keeping it original is,
Should it be cleaned?
well, that I think.
Yeah, so that's worth talking about.
Well, I'm not inclined to, I don't think we need to send a supplemental memo.
No,
right
I
away.
mean, you could just talk to me about it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I would think cleaning, yes, it's hard to gauge whether or not it needs restoration. I, for one, think that sort of with the use that we were talking about, having it in its current state might be the way to go. I don't know whether it needs to be restored to a beautiful state because, you know, the history of it is interesting and,
it's lived a life.
yeah.
It's like my wrinkles and freckles.
But I'm just concerned about the fact that it needs to be like framed or something because they're all pieces put together.
Mhm.
It doesn't sound like it's gonna be that safe.
Well, I imagine whatever they do, however they display it, it's gonna be integrated, it's gonna be
If
done in
somebody's
such a
gonna
way, yeah.
I think the frame around the glass is intact,
Okay.
if that, I mean, if it weren't, I would have,
Mm-hmm.
It's intact.
yeah.
Yes, it is.
I mean, one of the, some of the pieces of glass are cracked,
Mhm.
the frames.
Okay.
Is it something that needs to be held together or is it structurally sound? It is. So it's encased in wood right now, but it doesn't need to be, like you could pick it up if you had it.
Yeah.
I just, well, I think I could talk, through the administrative channels, maybe about having our building and grounds foreman
Yeah, I would
do
think
a
that,
cursory assessment to see if there's a location that seems most viable. You know, I'll talk to Chris York and, see if maybe even someone from the commission can join him, you know, to convey the particulars of your position and see if we, but anyway, let me start there. Does that sound good?
and in terms, did they clean it up or do anything with it when they, after they
Take
would?
it out of the building, put it in a box and it's downstairs. So no, nobody did anything to
Is
it.
that something that a DPW person can do, at least clean it up?
I mean, probably because it's intact.
Hmm.
Where is
Yeah.
it, downstairs?
Mhm.
Is the association planning on taking any position with it
As far as being restored,
or anything like that? Yeah, or,
well. For coming to costs. Much about restored and there and, but yeah, and there is a story to that as is, and restoring it makes sense.
mhm.
You wanna put it on the agenda?
What are you talking?
Okay.
All right. Anything else with regard to the transom at this point?
No.
All right, what else we have? The capstan. And that's, I visited it at its, tie it in with 21 Fairhaven Road. So I went there to try to look and see, I scoured the thing to see if I could find any type of serial number, marking, manufacturer, casting, die, date, nothing on it. Yeah, I mean, it's there.
So it's there.
It's kind of like, I would think, a background item at the park. It's not exactly the safest thing. There's prongs of metal on it that move off it, so it's not like it's gonna be integrated into a playground or anything like that.
So the piece itself is not originally from the, correct? Did we?
Well, we don't know.
Oh,
We don't know for certain. I mean, it certainly is, I mean, anybody who wants to go and take a look at it, it's just to the right on that 20, yes.
I peeked, because I
Yeah.
was told you weren't allowed to go in there and look at it, and I was.
Kind of look dangerous, but.
I was like,
Wild woman.
this is it, that's
Yeah,
it.
right. I mean, it's obviously like an old metal casting that
Yeah.
clearly is pretty old.
Right,
And you know, the information that we got is it was at somebody's, like, what was it, at the end of Baton Road in that neighborhood? But they didn't know whether it had been brought there afterwards. I mean, it's a robust piece of metal, so I mean, it almost seems like a commercial device,
Yeah.
not something I would think would be
so
in
when they
somebody's
brought
yard.
it down, nobody can move that, right?
No, it's embedded in concrete. It was in that concrete,
Yeah.
and it's probably like 3 feet, maybe 2 feet, 2.5 feet of concrete,
Oh, I didn't even notice that.
so. From, so we don't necessarily have to talk about the cap stand, because that's a little bit, kind of on the back burner a little bit at this point, but 21 Fairhaven Road, what's happening as far as that's concerned?
Last night, the council authorized the, submission of grant application.
Okay,
Along with the narrative to describe very broadly a concept plan for a park that would include, potentially terrace seating, potentially, other types of seating. There's a combination of both shallow, short bulkhead, living shoreline and beach. I mean, it really, we have many different components kind of in a concept plan. My question for the engineer is, does it lock it in? It does not. The idea is to really to make sure that we have a complete application.
Mhm.
And then, we know we need to hire a landscape architect. We need circulation and parking analysis. And we need,
is there a thought to put on-site parking there, or no?
no,
No.
but we need an assessment
Yeah.
of circulation and parking simply to, I think, one, to answer residents' questions. Two, to look at it holistically to see if, personally, my planning design background tells me there might be potential benefits to creating an amenity down there. We have to find the positive. We know what where the tension is around the potential negative impacts. It's just too intense, too much intensity, potential for driving, whether it's skateboards, bikes, and e-bikes or cars. We want to be really careful not to create something that's going to draw, or compromise the livability, the quality of life for that neighborhood.
Is there a thought about putting a playground in there? I know that was something.
No, like an actual with apparatus
Yeah,
that.
so it's like more of a passive park, but you
Yes.
said with different levels and,
Yeah,
whether or not to make it natural or
yes.
not.
So there's three professionals. The third one that we need is probably an environmental engineer, somebody who has some experience with marine, the living shoreline, bulkhead. These are, one is a very expensive scenario, one is a less expensive scenario. One could set Fairhaven apart, become kind of a leader and experimenting with something that could potentially benefit the housing from the communities more generally, a living shoreline has a lot of inherent benefits. People want to be able to get to the water.
Mhm.
Bulkhead puts you close to, but you really can't. So there's lots of evaluating still to do, but the council requires the professional guidance and assessment in order for, and we know generally, or I feel comfortable that I have a sense of where the community is, what the values are, what would not be good, and what would feel nice. But at the end of the day, there's a whole body of technical information we don't yet have because we haven't been able to hire the professionals.
Is the leaning towards, you said a combination of maybe bulkhead and natural, or is there an?
It's really premature for me to say. I think it's all in the concept plan because we don't know.
Because obviously, if you don't have a bulkhead there, it's gonna turn into the similar type situation as you have at the end of Normandy. It becomes like a
Correct.
beach.
Well, the Normandy, where the plan, as the drawings I've reviewed and meetings I've had, was to always include the living shoreline to stabilize that, so that we,
Yeah.
the surge wave action, the land, the park goes into the river, which is, I think, what your point was. And you can see from that tree on the eastern edge, it's completely the roots. So anyway, I forgot what you were just saying.
No, I was just asking whether or not, how far along and whether or not there's been a sort of an idea as to whether it should be natural or bulkhead in that.
It's still an open
Yeah.
question, because we do need that, we need that professional guidance. Like, I would wanna know the cost differences, I would wanna know. We have an engineered edge to the east, and we have an engineered edge, to the west. And, how do we reconcile them? We have a living shoreline in the middle. Are we just are we planning for failure? What are the things we can do to, ensure success of the living shoreline, even though those conditions, there's lots of questions. And, those, we need guidance to get them answered.
And any other, any time frame? Like what's the time frame?
Yeah, I can tell you the application will be submitted imminently because it was authorized last night. The awards are announced around November, maybe October, November, something like that. And, that would then trigger the borough's ability to retain the professionals. If we can do it before, we absolutely would, but, assuming that's the start time, notice of award, which I hope we do get, then it would start in the fall. We would bring on these professionals, would start to get the analysis, and then move towards a design,
Mhm.
which at the moment doesn't exist. yet.
Any thoughts, comments, on 21 Fairhaven Road or the capstone? Any other, I think we've covered all the issues. Anything else that we have covered?
And when you prepare your memorandum regarding, is your memorandum going to be limited to paint color? And are there any other items, like we all use this front door, I can carry that message, if you need to go in your memorandum, but are there any other things that you know for sure?
Yeah, again, I think the paint color is a big thing. I
Uh-huh.
think it's something that, since it is the exterior of this building is something that we'd like to weigh in on.
Okay.
Again, in terms of micromanaging, like with the doors and,
Okay.
I don't know that, I'm opening it to anybody else if they think, if you think it's necessary.
So on the list right now,
Clearly, if there was some replacement of the doors or something, that would be a big issue because it would affect the exterior, but just the door locks and stuff. That's something that,
that to my knowledge, you're talking about the exterior doors.
yeah,
To my knowledge, nothing is gonna be changed with the doors themselves,
okay.
yeah. And I'll just develop the list in the way I'll do it and make sure you guys know.
Well, you see it on both sides. You see what's
Yeah.
happening on the, from the borough side and here. So we rely on your guidance in that respect.
I don't think at the moment there's anything other than the pink color. I think your leadership is spot on. That's the place to focus, so.
Anything else? Any other thoughts about,
Any update on? The Fairhaven
oh, yes.
and about text that we were.
Not that I haven't received anything or nothing's at my knowledge. Though, unrelated to that, but somewhat related, do you remember the New Jersey? Are you familiar with New Jersey Historic Trust Black Heritage Trail? New Jersey has a Black Heritage Trail, right? And, you can apply for, landmark designations. I call it that, but I forget what they call it, but you're designated a landmark on the Black Heritage Trail. And you get a sign, it's a very beautiful sign with a short narrative and we have an application for the Historic East Chapel of West Hall. And we are almost done with this application. I have told the team at New Jersey Historic Trust, because I've been in touch with them to help move this application through. I've told them about the African American school. And they agree it's a worthy, I don't know too much about it, I just know that it was here and stuff. I know enough to be able to convey it to them. So, we talked about getting another application together for that. Again, that hasn't even come to council, that would require a resolution from the governing body, there's things to put in place for that to happen, but.
I think one of the things that's helpful when thinking about this chapel, but this chapel and the school went together.
I agree.
So the school was built first and the chapel was built second, and then the Black community moved to this street area because of the church. I mean, that's my understanding. But I'm just saying it's a way to think about this situation. It's not these separate buildings. It's a community, historical community. And I know this, after I saw that, the very I didn't know much about it. but there were some things here that didn't quite sound right. And I went back and researched, it. So I ended up in the original, I went down and cracked into the original news clippings of 1881 and 1882. And this is a good story. There's some things that should be changed, but it really, a law was passed to integrate the schools in New Jersey, and Fairhaven voted not to do it. I mean, it's an extraordinary story. I'm saying, including the African American citizens, they voted not to.
And what year was that?
It's General Fisk's support, and General Fisk himself is a whole other story. It's hard, it's tricky to figure out the motivation. He hired, a lot of people worked for him, and he helped, he gave them loans for houses, but he had a lot of power. It wasn't necessarily, he had a lot of power
So,
in the town.
Fisk, wasn't necessarily a proponent of integration for a period of time.
No, he at the meeting said they should vote to stay in the public school.
Yeah,
And the African American, it wasn't not an NACP, but the lead pastor in the area said you should be with the white kids. You know, don't.
I mean, you got to imagine that that was.
And then they built the school, which was a good school for the time. It was a modern school.
Almost like a separate but equal type
Yeah,
mindset, but they probably thought of the practicality of it, that maybe, you wouldn't get along, you might be, especially if the town is voting not to integrate, that the mindset wasn't to do that, it might have been that.
They had a big meeting, the whites and the blacks in the town, voted no.
And the blacks as well.
Oh, yeah, but the criteria, we need a black teacher. We need a black teacher in our school, because they're people going to pay attention to it. So it's
That
real
predates
interesting story.
the Fairhaven rule, because then also this
Yeah.
amazing legal victory, they brought the legal victory and the judge's order back to Fairhaven, and the local school board said, well, that's nice, but no.
Yeah.
It's a long time coming, the integration here in Fairhaven, even though we helped, this is the community helped to make it possible for the people.
What was the year that actually they integrated the schools in Fairhaven?
I don't know if it's that year, I think
It was that
early
versus
fifties.
support it.
It was, yeah,
Yeah.
1850s. No,
Not-
Oh, yeah, much of the state was segregated in the southern part of the state, southern parts of Pennsylvania, the schools were segregated. I grew up in my parents were up to pass the black school where they lived, and they only had been segregated. I taught the black school, and it was desegregated for 20 years before I started teaching.
Curious, that's a
It's very-
specific, it's
very
a 1950s,
broad
that's.
history.
Yeah.
It grabbed me. But I agree with Steve's point about these two landmarks go together. And that was part of my pitch to New Jersey Historic Trust. That it's a good story, and it makes sense that they're near each other on this trail, this small section of the trail here in Fairhaven. So, I hope we apply for it. I'm only one council person, obviously there's six, so see.
Is there a map of the trails?
Yeah, there is.
I'd love to see that.
Yeah,
Anything else in Monmouth?
there's some things in Red Bank. Red Bank just got 2 sites designated, I think, last year, at the end of last year.
You know what they are?
One might be the PC.
Oh, yeah, okay.
I mean, I think a house.
Somebody mentioned a lot about it, because there was a tour of 11 African American schools like a couple months ago in Monmouth County.
Mm.
Yeah, I visited a couple of schools down here in Asbury Park.
The other one that's really interesting in Fairhaven, and I find it interesting, is, you guys know what the Green Book is?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And of course, that we had traveling performers come through Fairhaven.
Yeah.
And, that we have one home in Fairhaven that wasn't in the Green Book.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. right behind us.
you know which one of those?
So black performers, would stay there.
So you know the house?
I think I know. Oh, yes, I'll show you.
It's gotta be public knowledge, it was published in the Green Book.
It's so when you go through, where Welsh Farm, or no, where Krausers is.
Yeah.
And that Two River Pool Company is, that driveway that goes through the center, between those two buildings. The house is on access with that, it's like the last house at the end of that road, the Borough's up there.
Hmm.
It was in the Green Book,
Oh, interesting.
pretty cool.
Yeah, I understand.
So there's more than one place that could be on the trail. We've been at this one application for over a year.
You know, who's responsible or who gives them some insight or input into that. Like,
I can't help with that. I do think I'd have to get back to the answer. To me, I've not been made a big, that made it not to me. But to me, I don't have a particular situation.
Wait, what can you say? What can you
I was just asking, there's gonna be some kind of commemorative.
Yeah.
For the school, and that flag was gonna be it, part of it. But now I think, now so it has disappeared, I don't know who's,
I don't
and
know.
what I was saying was. I just wanted to talk to the person who's responsible.
Well, that's
That
not
might be-
split up, doesn't it?
Hmm?
That sounds split up.
No,
Yeah.
okay.
I think it might be nice to do it as part of the heritage trail, the Black Heritage Trail. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, that makes complete sense.
That flag is the reason it will get on the Black Heritage Trail. I mean, that story of the vote and what happened here in Fairhaven, that the Supreme Court decision. That's almost enough to get it by itself, to get it.
For sure. Yeah.
All right, any other comments from the commission or from the audience? In the Zoom land? All right, I'll make a motion that we approve the May 29th, 2024 minutes. I don't know that we need a second. I don't know, anybody want a second? Want a second?
Second.
No.
Mr. Powell?
Yes.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Tudor?
Yeah.
Mr. Heller?
Yes,
Mrs. Stacy? Yeah. And Mrs.
And motion to close. Thanks, Tracy.
You know, I really want to put,